All right, we are live. We are live. We are live.
How's it going, everybody? Nathan King here with Mr. Jason Caldwell of Auburn 24/7 Auburn Undercover, here with the first pregame blitz of the season inside Jordan-Hare Stadium. A cloudy day here, hoping that the weather holds out for Auburn's matchup with San Jose State, 6:30 Central Time on ESPNU. And Jason, we were talking about it all this week. You know, there's just not much more you can necessarily say about this game, because just like last season when they opened up with first Akron and then Alabama State, just working out the kinks, you know, having a couple tune-up games. But luckily for them last week, particularly with the quarterbacks and also, you know, some defense, wanting to see some more guys rotating there, maybe on the defensive line. There are a couple improvements that I think are on the table for them to maybe get after today.
Yeah, I think you look at it there. Obviously, week 1 to week 2, not a huge test from Mercer last week, but we'll see. Can this Auburn team take a step forward? And you know, for me, it starts in the passing game. 13 of 20, made a few plays in the passing game, but not enough playmaking out of the wide receivers. Can they get some of those things going tonight? And I think more emphasis on the passing game. Now, this team wants to run the football. I don't know that running it tonight necessarily means you're going to be able to run it in next week against Penn State or beyond. I think they got to be able to throw it at some point and be successful there. And then the other side, San Jose State gave up 7 sacks last week at Portland State. This Auburn front, this is a game where they should wreak havoc tonight. This San Jose State offensive line is very inexperienced and pretty small. Auburn should have their way with them. Those are the two things where you go, that's the starting point for me on Saturday night.
Yeah, you mentioned that opener for San Jose State. Not very pretty. Like you said, 7 sacks against Portland State in that game. They needed a late touchdown in order to beat an FCS team on their home turf. This is a staff and a team overall, Jason, that Brian Harsin is very familiar with. And the quarterback as well, Chevin Cordero, the last time they saw him, the last time Jeff Schmedding and some of these defensive staffers saw him, it was at Hawaii in 2020. He was leading a furious fourth quarter comeback attempt in that game. This is one of the more experienced quarterbacks that Auburn's going to see this season. I believe 46, 47 career touchdown passes. But like you mentioned, if they can get this pass rush rolling, they should have an opportunity to create some problems, because, again, it's an undersized O-line, and it's an O-line that really struggled with an FCS team last week.
Yeah, and you're right. You know, how does that work in harmony with a secondary that, hey, they played a little softer last week. We'll see if they're a little bit more tight. This is a passing attack that can do damage. You mentioned Cordero. Guys had some success in his career. They got 3 guys that have more than 1,000 career receiving yards outside, including a 6'4", 215. He's a big playmaking wide receiver. So if Auburn, you know, if they can't get pressure and they give him time, this is a team that's capable of making some plays. Now, I just don't think they're going to be able to run it. They didn't run it last week against Portland State. They're not going to run it tonight against Auburn. So, yeah, you're right. That's defensively, everything's there in front of you. Can you create pressure? Can you create turnovers and create havoc? Create is the key for me on defense.
Yeah, that's something Brian Harsin talked about this week, is that, you know, they only had 1 sack. They had a handful of pressures. They got in there. Maybe you could call that Eku Leota play where the ball got out. Maybe you could call that a sack. But on the other side of the ball for Auburn, of course, again, the spotlight is going to be on the quarterbacks. We're not expecting much of a difference in terms of these guys. TJ Finley absolutely should still be the starter. And Robbie Ashford is still going to get plenty of work. But like you mentioned, it would be nice for them. It would be nice for that receiving core to kind of diversify the passing game a little bit. Maybe see Robbie Ashford throw more than 7 passes so you can get a little bit better understanding of how he can affect the offense as more than just a runner.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think from both guys, you got to see the passing game develop a little more, because you're going to need more of that to beat a Penn State moving forward. You may not need more of that to beat Missouri the way they played on Saturday, but Penn State's going to be that's a difficult challenge. You got to work on those things, and we saw Auburn open it up a little bit on the offensive playbook last week with a few things. I think we'll see them open it up a little bit more. You're not going to throw everything out there, but I do think you got to continue to work on those things. Running game, that should be there. Can you work on the passing game and add to it? Maybe a Coy Moore involved. I think that's the guy we didn't see as much of last week. Maybe here in week 2, that's a guy you start to see a little bit more involved. I could see Zero being